If you truly love life, don't waste time, because time is what life is made of. You look at me and see speed, precision, power. But what made me unstoppable wasn't my body, it was my mind. Behind every strike, behind every movement, there was a system, a code. I didn't just train muscles, I trained perception. I rewired the way the mind sees, feels, and responds to reality. Most people live as prisoners of their thoughts, trapped by fear, distraction, and self-doubt. I broke those chains. I explored my own consciousness, like a warrior exploring unknown lands. I discovered settings inside the mind that most people will never touch, hidden switches that control focus, emotion, and flow. These are the 7 hidden settings of the mind, the keys that turn an ordinary human into an unstoppable force. 1. The setting of emptiness, becoming formless. Bruce Lee once said, "Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water." Most people read that line and think it's just poetic wisdom. But Bruce wasn't being poetic, he was describing a mental technology, a way to completely reprogram how your mind works. When he said empty your mind, he was telling you to clear out all the noise that stops you from being who you truly are. Your mind, right now, is filled with layers of unnecessary clutter, opinions that aren't yours, fears that came from society, doubts planted by others, and beliefs you never chose. Each one acts like a stone in the river of your mind, blocking your flow. When Bruce said, "Be water," he wasn't talking about becoming passive. He meant becoming mentally fluid, to let go of rigid thinking, fixed identity, and emotional resistance. Water doesn't argue with obstacles, it flows around them. It doesn't panic when it's poured into a different shape. It simply adapts. Whether it's a cup, a river, or an ocean, it remains the same essence, calm, powerful, and infinite in potential. That's the secret. To remain yourself no matter what form life forces you into. When you enter this setting of emptiness, you stop living like a prisoner of emotions. You stop reacting to every challenge, insult, or setback as if it defines you. You learn to move through life with grace, not resistance. Problems stop feeling like walls. They start feeling like waves, and waves can be surfed. You stop fighting life, and you start flowing with it. That's when true power appears, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that cannot be dominated by anyone. Emptiness doesn't mean having nothing inside. It means having space for clarity, peace, and creativity to arise. When your mind is empty, it becomes still, alert, and sharp. You stop overthinking, stop chasing control, and simply respond to what's in front of you with precision. You become unpredictable because no one can guess your next move. You become unbreakable because nothing can attach itself to you. You become unstoppable because water always finds a way, quietly, patiently, but inevitably. That's what Bruce meant when he said, "Be formless." Don't be stuck in one identity. Don't cling to how things should be. Let go and allow yourself to move with life. When your mind is empty, you don't lose yourself, you find the real you, the one that was hidden beneath all the noise. And when that happens, no obstacle, no person, and no situation can ever control you again. You've become what Bruce Lee was: calm, like still water, yet powerful enough to carve mountains. 2. The setting of observation. Seeing without the mind. Bruce Lee believed that most people don't truly see the world, they only see their thoughts about it. Every time something happens, the mind rushes in to label, judge, and react. Someone looks at you the wrong way, and instantly your mind says, "They don't like me." You fail at something once, and your mind whispers, "You're not good enough." This constant mental noise keeps you trapped inside an illusion of your own making. Bruce understood that real vision begins when the noise stops. He trained himself to observe reality as it is, not as he thinks it should be. In a fight, Bruce didn't have time to think. The moment you think, you hesitate. And the moment you hesitate, you lose. So, he trained his awareness to be pure, empty, and direct. He didn't decide what move to make, he allowed the situation to decide through him. That's what he meant by, "It hits all by itself." When the mind becomes silent, the body moves naturally, guided by instinct and intuition rather than thought. His movements were not planned, they were the result of total presence. This setting of observation is about learning to see without judgment. When you observe something without instantly labeling it as good or bad, you start to experience truth in its rawest form. Imagine looking at a sunset without comparing it to yesterday's. Imagine listening to someone without preparing your reply while they're still talking. That's what true observation feels like. Your mind becomes like a mirror, reflecting everything clearly without distortion. Bruce's mind was like that mirror. He saw his opponent's intentions before their bodies even moved, not because of magic, but because his awareness was so still that he could pick up the smallest signals, the tightening of a shoulder, the shift of breath, the change in rhythm. Observation at that level is not about effort. It's about silence. When the mind stops chattering, perception sharpens automatically. In everyday life, this principle is just as powerful. When you learn to observe your own emotions instead of drowning in them, you gain control. Anger rises, you notice it. Fear comes, you watch it. Instead of reacting blindly, you respond consciously. You start seeing how your mind tries to pull you into drama, comparison, and fear. The more you observe, the more distance you create between you and your thoughts. That distance is freedom. When Bruce said, "A wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can learn from a wise answer," he was pointing to the same truth. Wisdom doesn't come from more thinking. It comes from deeper seeing. Most people collect knowledge but never develop awareness. Observation is the bridge between the two. When you learn to observe clearly, you stop getting lost in your mind's stories. You stop reacting to illusions and start responding to reality. This setting of observation transforms you from a thinker into a witness. You stop trying to control everything, and instead, you see everything. And when you can see clearly without fear, without bias, you begin to understand the rhythm of life itself. You become more precise, more patient, and more powerful, because awareness is the ultimate weapon. That's what Bruce mastered, not just martial arts, but the art of seeing. Seeing beyond thought, seeing beyond ego, seeing what truly is. And when you reach that level, your movements, your choices, even your silence become effortless expressions of truth. You stop living life unconsciously and start experiencing it as it unfolds, moment by moment, exactly as it's meant to be. 3. The setting of detachment, freedom from outcome. Bruce Lee once said, "If you spend too much time thinking about a thing, you'll never get it done." Behind that simple sentence lies one of the most powerful mental settings he ever lived: by detachment. To Bruce, detachment wasn't about not caring, it was about freeing yourself from the prison of expectation. It meant acting with full intensity, full focus, but with zero dependence on how things turn out. Most people today are chained to results. They can't move unless they know success is guaranteed. They fear rejection, failure, and judgment. But Bruce understood that the one who needs control never truly has it. When you attach yourself to outcomes, you become their slave. You start living in your head instead of in the moment. If something goes wrong, your energy collapses. If someone disapproves, your confidence disappears. You stop flowing with life because you're obsessed with how life should treat you. But when you detach, you reclaim your freedom. You act because it's right, not because it's safe. You move forward because it's your path, not because others applaud it. That's the essence of Bruce's philosophy: to express yourself honestly without fear of consequence. In combat, this principle was everything. Bruce didn't enter a fight thinking, "I must win." He entered with the mindset, "I will express myself completely." Winning was the natural result of mastery, not the goal itself. This freed him from hesitation and fear. A mind focused on the outcome hesitates. A mind detached from it reacts instantly. This is why Bruce's movements seemed effortless, because they were. He didn't fight for victory. He fought to express truth in motion. And truth, when expressed freely, always wins. In life, detachment is what gives you emotional strength. People will misunderstand you, doubt you, or even leave you when you start walking your own path. But the detached mind doesn't crumble under that pressure. It stays centered. It says, "I am not what happens to me. I am how I respond." Detachment gives you that calm, that inner steadiness that no storm can shake. You no longer measure your worth by external approval. You no longer chase recognition like a beggar of validation. You move through the world like a warrior who needs nothing but his inner alignment. Bruce practiced this every day. He detached not only from failure but also from success. Because success can be just as dangerous when it feeds your ego. He once said, "To hell with circumstances. I create opportunities." That's detachment in action. He didn't wait for things to be perfect. He made them perfect through his mindset. The detached person doesn't wait for conditions. They act, adapt, and trust the process. Detachment also means learning to let go of what no longer serves you. People, habits, goals, even versions of yourself that you've outgrown. Bruce was ruthless about self-renewal. If something limited his evolution, he cut it off. That's why he could keep reinventing himself from actor to philosopher to martial artist to cultural icon. He refused to be trapped by any label. He lived as a free mind in a world of cages. When you detach, you begin to see how much of your suffering was self-created. You realize that disappointment only hurts when you believe things must go a certain way. You learn that failure doesn't destroy you, attachment to perfection does. Once you stop demanding that life follow your plan, you start enjoying the journey again. You begin to see that every setback carries a lesson, every loss hides a gift, and every ending is a disguised beginning. Bruce's detachment gave him emotional armor, not by making him numb, but by making him clear. He felt deeply but didn't drown in feelings. He acted fiercely but didn't cling to results. He loved passionately but didn't lose himself in others. That balance between engagement and freedom made him untouchable. When you practice detachment, you stop being reactive. You no longer depend on things going your way to feel strong or happy. You stop chasing validation, stop fearing failure, stop trying to please everyone. You become calm, grounded, and self-sufficient. Detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. It's realizing that your power doesn't come from what you can control, but from what no longer controls you. Bruce once said, "The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering." And you can't live that kind of life if you're always afraid of what others will think, or of what might go wrong. Detachment is the path to true strength. It's the state of mind where you give your all but remain free no matter the result. When you master this setting, you don't just act, you flow. You stop worrying about success or failure because both are just waves in the same ocean. You begin to move with life, not against it. And when that happens, you finally understand Bruce Lee's true secret. The moment you detach from everything, you gain control over everything. 4. The setting of inner dialogue, reprogramming the voice within. Bruce Lee once said, "As you think, so shall you become." Those 6 words reveal one of the greatest truths about human potential. Your entire life is being created and directed by the conversation happening inside your own head. That voice you hear every day, the one that comments, doubts, fears, hopes, and criticizes, that voice is the architect of your destiny. Most people never realize that their inner dialogue is like a constant background program shaping how they feel, what they do, and who they believe they are. Bruce Lee understood this deeply. He knew that before you can master the body, you must master the mind, and before you can master the mind, you must first master the voice that speaks within it. For most of us, that voice is not our friend. It's full of fear, hesitation, guilt, and limitation, echoes of what others told us we couldn't be. We repeat those thoughts so often that they start to feel like truth. I'm not strong enough. I always fail. People don't respect me. I'm just not that type of person. Every one of these lines becomes a mental command that the subconscious obeys without question. Bruce Lee refused to allow such programming to run his life. He replaced every limiting belief with one of empowerment. When he faced challenges, his inner dialogue wasn't, "This is too hard." It was, "I will find a way." When others doubted him, he didn't waste energy arguing. His mind quietly answered, "I know who I am." Bruce trained his inner voice as seriously as his punches and kicks. He spoke to himself like a master, not a victim. He filled his mind with words that fueled his discipline and belief. "Do not pray for an easy life," he said. "Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one." That's not just motivation, it's reprogramming. It's taking the voice of fear and turning it into the voice of power. Every word you repeat inside your head is a seed. The more you water it with emotion, the deeper it grows into your character. Bruce knew that to change your life, you don't need to fight the world, you need to change the words you use when you talk to yourself. Think about how much of your energy is lost in negative thinking. You wake up and tell yourself you're tired. so your body becomes tired. You fail once and say, I can't do this. And suddenly, every part of your being agrees. That's the power of suggestion. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue. It obeys. It builds reality around the words you believe most. Bruce flipped this mechanism in his favor. He fed his mind phrases that expanded possibility instead of shrinking it. When he felt fear, he didn't say, I'm scared. He said, I am alert. When he was in pain, he didn't say, I can't. He said, I'm growing. He transformed every negative into a signal of strength. Bruce believed that the human mind is like water. It takes the shape of whatever you pour into it. If you fill it with doubt, it becomes a prison. If you fill it with belief, it becomes a weapon. Most people are unaware that they're hypnotizing themselves daily with their own words. They speak weakness into existence. They reinforce old pain by repeating it. But the moment you take control of your inner dialogue, everything changes. You start catching yourself before the mind spirals. You begin replacing every limiting statement with one that opens you up. I can't becomes I'm learning. I'm broken becomes I'm rebuilding. This is hard becomes this is shaping me. Over time, your mind starts believing you, and when the mind believes, the body follows. Bruce's mental discipline came from this alignment between word and action. He didn't say things casually. Every sentence he spoke was deliberate, carved with purpose. His inner dialogue was a training ground where weakness was challenged daily. When people criticized him, he didn't let their words override his own. He once said, I am not in this world to live up to your expectations, and you are not in this world to live up to mine. That is the voice of someone whose mind is his own. Most people live as echoes of others, parents, teachers, society, friends. Bruce refused that fate. He spoke his own truth until it became his identity. The setting of inner dialogue is about becoming the gatekeeper of your mind. You decide which words are allowed to stay and which must be thrown out. If your inner world is filled with noise, confusion, and criticism, how can peace grow there? You must clean that space daily, just as you would sweep dust from a floor. The mind needs constant maintenance. Bruce understood that his mental environment had to match the level of excellence he demanded from himself physically. That's why he meditated, wrote journals, and reflected constantly to keep his inner voice clear, strong, and disciplined. When you begin reprogramming your inner dialogue, you will notice resistance at first. The old voice will mock you. It will say, you're lying to yourself. But keep going. Consistency rewires the subconscious. Over time, that new, powerful voice becomes natural. It becomes the calm mentor, guiding you through fear and chaos. You start living with quiet confidence, because your mind no longer works against you, it works for you. Bruce Lee didn't become extraordinary by chance. He built himself word by word, thought by thought, belief by belief. He understood that reality bends around inner conviction. That's why his energy was magnetic, his presence unshakable, his mind was unified. When your words, thoughts, and actions all speak the same truth, you become unstoppable. So ask yourself, what kind of voice are you living with? Is it one that lifts you or one that limits you? The next time you hear that whisper of doubt, remember Bruce's lesson. Your inner dialogue is not fixed, it's programmable. Change the script and you change your life. The strongest weapon you will ever hold is not your fist, not your talent, not your body. It's the voice inside your mind. Control that, and the rest of the world will begin to move in harmony with you. 5. The setting of adaptability, the art of becoming anything. Bruce Lee once said, absorb what is useful, discard what is not, add what is uniquely your own. That sentence is more than a philosophy, it's a blueprint for mental evolution. Adaptability was the foundation of Bruce's genius. He understood that the world is in constant motion, and those who cling to fixed forms eventually break. The river that cannot bend will dry out. The tree that refuses to sway will snap in the storm. Bruce saw that the same principle applies to the mind. The moment your thinking becomes rigid, your growth stops. True power, he realized, doesn't come from resistance. It comes from adaptability, from being able to shift, transform, and evolve without losing your essence. When Bruce began training in martial arts, he studied Wing Chun, a traditional Chinese style with precise forms and fixed patterns. But as he grew in experience, he began to question its limits. He realized that no single system could prepare him for the endless variety of real combat. So he started exploring other disciplines: Western boxing, fencing, judo, wrestling, and discovered fragments of truth in each. He took what worked, refined it, and combined it into something new: Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. It wasn't a style, it was the rejection of all styles. It was the embodiment of adaptability movement that flowed freely, without boundaries. Bruce applied that same principle to life. He believed that just as a fighter must adapt to the rhythm of an opponent, a person must adapt to the rhythm of existence. Life is not predictable. It shifts without warning. People change, situations evolve, and challenges appear when you least expect them. The rigid mind tries to resist, complains, and breaks under pressure. The adaptable mind bends, adjusts, and finds new solutions. Bruce's strength was not that he never faced chaos. It was that he could move with it. When a door closed, he didn't stare at it. He looked for another path. When a plan failed, he didn't collapse. He reinvented himself. Adaptability is not weakness, it's mastery. Weakness is refusing to change because you fear losing control. Strength is allowing yourself to evolve, trusting that no matter how the world shifts, you will still find your balance. Bruce embodied that trust. When Hollywood rejected him for being too Asian to be a star, he didn't surrender. He returned to Hong Kong, created his own films, and became a global icon. When his injuries threatened his career, he didn't give up. He transformed his training to focus on mental discipline and philosophical depth. Every obstacle became fuel for reinvention. Every change became a stepping stone to the next version of himself. To be adaptable means to live without ego. Ego wants things to remain predictable so it can feel safe and superior. But life doesn't care about ego, it demands flexibility. Bruce said, "A good teacher protects his pupils from his own influence." He meant that even his own teachings were not absolute. They were stepping stones meant to be surpassed. The adaptable mind doesn't worship tradition, it honors truth. It studies everything but clings to nothing. It's open, curious, and free. Think about how this applies to your own life. How often do you resist change because it feels uncomfortable? How often do you cling to old identities, jobs, relationships, or beliefs simply because they're familiar? That resistance is what keeps you stuck. Adaptability, on the other hand, is the key to resilience. When you're adaptable, life cannot destroy you. It can only reshape you. The storms that drown others become the winds that push you forward. You start to see every ending as a new beginning. You stop fearing the unknown because you've trained yourself to thrive within it. Bruce's adaptability came from deep self-knowledge. He knew who he was beyond labels, beyond achievements, beyond what others thought. That's why he could change his approach without losing his identity. He once said, "I'm not teaching you anything. I just help you to explore yourself." That's the heart of adaptability, not becoming someone else, but discovering more of who you already are. It's about peeling away layers of imitation until what remains is pure authenticity, flexible, alive, and real. In the modern world, adaptability is one of the rarest strengths. People fear change more than they fear failure. They build routines and call them comfort, but comfort is often a quiet form of decay. Bruce saw comfort as the enemy of greatness. He pushed his mind and body into new territories every day, not to prove something, but to expand the boundaries of what was possible. That's why his evolution never stopped. He wasn't content being good at one thing. He wanted to understand everything. His curiosity was limitless, his openness absolute. To live like Bruce is to treat life as an ongoing experiment. You try, you fail, you adjust, and you try again without shame or hesitation. You learn from everyone and everything, from success and failure, from opponents and allies, from books and silence. You allow yourself to evolve continuously. Adaptability means you don't seek certainty, you seek understanding. You don't cling to one path, you walk many and make your own. When you master this setting, you stop fearing uncertainty because you realize that you are uncertainty, a living, breathing force capable of infinite transformation. You become untouchable, not because you're rigid and unchanging, but because you can become anything life demands. That's the secret Bruce Lee lived by. He was never confined to a single definition. He was a philosopher, fighter, actor, poet, thinker, and visionary all in one, because he never allowed the mind to stop expanding. The setting of adaptability is about becoming limitless. It teaches you that survival doesn't belong to the strongest or the smartest, it belongs to the most adaptable. When you stop fearing change and start becoming change, you rise above the world's chaos. You evolve faster than your obstacles. You grow beyond your old self. You no longer ask, "What will happen to me?" You say, "Whatever happens, I will become what I must." That is the true essence of Bruce Lee's mind, not to fight against life, but to move with it so perfectly that every shift becomes an advantage. When you adapt, you stop breaking, you stop fearing, you stop waiting for permission. You begin to flow endlessly, freely, powerfully, just like water. 6. The setting of stillness, the calm in the storm. Bruce Lee once said, "The successful warrior is the average man, with laser-like focus." It's one of his most overlooked teachings, because hidden beneath that quote lies the secret to true mastery, the setting of stillness. In a world obsessed with speed, noise, and constant movement, Bruce discovered that real strength doesn't come from doing more, but from being still enough to see clearly. Stillness is not the absence of motion. It is the presence of control. It's the inner state where chaos loses its power over you, and your mind becomes sharper than any weapon. For Bruce, stillness was the foundation of focus. He didn't just train his body to move faster, he trained his mind to stay unmoved. When he fought, he wasn't overwhelmed by the noise of the crowd, the fear of pain, or the rush of adrenaline. He entered a calm mental space where only awareness existed. No distractions, no doubts, no emotions, clouding judgment. That's why his movements looked effortless. He wasn't reacting, he was responding. There's a difference. Reaction comes from emotion, response comes from awareness, and awareness can only exist in stillness. Most people live their lives in a storm of thought. They're always planning, worrying, remembering, comparing, and imagining. Their minds never stop talking. Even when they're quiet, they're not truly still. The mind jumps from one idea to another, like a restless monkey, and that constant noise drains energy. Bruce understood that to achieve mastery, you must silence the storm within. You must create a space between the event and your reaction, between the noise and your awareness. That space, that gap, is where your true power lives. He called it being like water, but what he really meant was being undisturbed. Water doesn't resist the environment. It reflects it perfectly. When the water is calm, it becomes a mirror. In that reflection, truth appears. When your mind is calm, you begin to see things as they are, not as your emotions paint them to be. You stop overreacting. You stop fearing outcomes. You start making decisions with precision and clarity. Stillness allows you to move with purpose rather than panic. It gives you an unshakable presence. When Bruce said, "It's not the daily increase but daily decrease. Hack away at the unessential," he was teaching the art of stillness. Life's distractions are infinite, but your attention is limited. If you scatter it in every direction, you lose strength. Stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing only what matters. It's about cutting out noise, mental, emotional, and physical, until only the essential remains. That's how focus is born. A calm mind doesn't chase 10 things at once. It pursues one thing completely. In training, Bruce often sat in silence after long practice sessions, closing his eyes and breathing deeply. This wasn't rest. It was mental sharpening. In those moments of stillness, he wasn't escaping the world, he was syncing with it. He understood that action and stillness are not opposites, they're partners. Action without stillness becomes chaos. Stillness without action becomes stagnation. The balance between the two creates mastery. Stillness also gives birth to emotional intelligence. When your mind is calm, you can observe your emotions instead of being controlled by them. Anger arises, you notice it. Fear comes, you see it without becoming it. Doubt whispers, you hear it but don't obey. This awareness gives you freedom. You start realizing that emotions are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. They only take control when you let them. A still mind welcomes them, watches them pass, and remains untouched. In battle and in life, this calmness makes you unbreakable. When others lose control, you stay steady. When situations spiral, you adapt with clarity. This is why Bruce was always composed even under pressure, even when the world doubted him. He had trained his mind not to collapse under noise. He didn't let the outside world dictate his internal state. The more intense things became, the calmer he got. Like the eye of a hurricane, perfectly still, while everything else rages around it. This kind of inner stillness isn't natural. It's trained. It's built through discipline, through moments of silence, deep breathing, meditation, and mindful awareness. Bruce would often tell his students to walk on, to keep moving forward, not emotionally, but spiritually, to keep the mind light and unshaken. He understood that if your inner world is chaotic, it doesn't matter how strong you are physically, you'll always be vulnerable. But if your inner world is calm, no chaos can reach you. Think about how this applies to your life. When someone insults you, do you immediately react with anger? When life doesn't go your way, do you spiral into frustration? When uncertainty strikes, do you lose your peace? Every time that happens, it's not life that's defeating you, it's your inability to stay still. Stillness gives you control over yourself, and control over yourself gives you control over every situation. Stillness doesn't mean inaction. It means acting from a place of clarity instead of chaos. It means that before you speak, you understand. Before you move, you feel. Before you decide, you see. This is what Bruce practiced in every aspect of life, to move from stillness, not noise. His power wasn't born from aggression. It was born from awareness. That's why he said, "Calm mind brings inner strength and self-confidence." The truth is, stillness is the source of all mastery. Without it, focus is impossible, balance is fragile, and peace is fleeting. But with it, you become anchored. You become steady, no matter how wild the storm outside becomes. You gain the ability to pause before reacting, to think before speaking, to act with precision instead of impulse. That's what separates a warrior from a fighter, a master from an amateur. When you develop this setting of stillness, you begin to notice that your energy changes. You stop wasting it on overthinking, drama, and worry. You feel lighter. You start to notice small details others overlook. You become more patient, more deliberate, more powerful. And the best part, your presence begins to affect others. People feel calm around you because you carry calm within you. You become a stabilizing force in a chaotic world. Bruce Lee once compared the mind to a still pond. When the surface is disturbed, you can't see the reflection of the moon. But when it's calm, the image becomes crystal clear. That's what stillness does to your life. It lets you see truth. It lets you see yourself. In the end, this setting isn't about learning how to freeze. It's about learning how to flow without disturbance. It's about cultivating such inner peace that even when the world shakes, you stand unmoved. Because when you are still inside, you are no longer reacting to the storm, you become the calm within it. That's the kind of stillness Bruce Lee lived. And that's the kind of stillness that turns an ordinary person into an extraordinary force. 7. The setting of limitless belief, breaking mental walls. Bruce Lee once said, "As you think, so shall you become." This wasn't just a motivational phrase, it was a scientific truth he lived by. Every action, every victory, every moment of mastery in Bruce's life came from one single source, his belief. Not belief as in wishful thinking or empty confidence, but a deep, unwavering conviction that the human mind, when aligned with purpose, could overcome anything. He believed that the limits people saw around them were illusions built by conditioning, fear, and doubt, and he made it his life's mission to shatter those walls. Most people live inside invisible cages. These cages aren't made of steel, they're made of thoughts. They've been told since childhood what they can and can't do, what's realistic, what's acceptable, what's normal. Over time, these ideas become mental chains that control how far a person dares to reach. The tragedy is that most people never question those chains. They mistake them for truth. Bruce refused to accept that. He questioned everything: his teachers, his culture, even his own body's limitations. He wanted to know what was truly possible when a human being stopped believing in boundaries. He once said, "If you always put limits on everything you do, physical or anything else, it will spread into your work and into your life. There are no limits, only plateaus, and you must not stay there. You must go beyond them." That is the philosophy of limitless belief. It means understanding that your potential is not fixed. It expands every time you challenge it. Every moment you step beyond fear, you enter a new level of yourself. And that's exactly what Bruce did over and over again. When Bruce Lee arrived in America, he faced discrimination, doubt, and countless rejections. People told him that an Asian man could never be a Hollywood star. They told him his accent would hold him back, that his philosophy was too foreign, that his physical training methods were too strange. But Bruce didn't argue. He simply believed in himself so completely that the world had no choice but to follow. He transformed rejection into redirection and limitation into innovation. When they said no to his dream, he built a new path with his own hands. That is the power of belief. It doesn't wait for permission. To understand this setting, you must realize something profound. Your brain is always listening to your beliefs. Every thought you repeat becomes a command that your body and behavior obey. If you tell yourself, "I can't," your body shuts down, your creativity fades, and your energy lowers. If you tell yourself, "I will," your nervous system aligns with that command, your focus sharpens, and your actions follow. Bruce knew this deeply. That's why he constantly trained his mind to believe in possibility rather than limitation. He filled his thoughts with certainty, not arrogance, but clarity, the kind that comes from knowing who you are and what you're capable of becoming. He said, "What you habitually think largely determines what you will ultimately become." So, ask yourself, what are you habitually thinking? Most people feed their minds with self-doubt, guilt, and fear every day without realizing they're programming failure. The world around you mirrors your inner world. If you believe the world is unfair, you'll find proof everywhere. If you believe opportunity is hidden in every challenge, you'll start noticing doors where others only see walls. Belief doesn't just change how you think, it literally changes what you see. Bruce's belief wasn't built overnight. It was forged through pain, discipline, and persistence. When he suffered a severe back injury in 1970, doctors told him he might never practice martial arts again. Most people would have accepted that diagnosis, but Bruce didn't. He refused to believe it. Lying in bed, unable to move, he spent months reprogramming his mind, visualizing his recovery, writing his philosophies, and planning his comeback. That period of stillness could have broken him instead. It birthed his deepest strength. He later said, "Defeat is a state of mind. No one is ever defeated until defeat has been accepted as a reality." His belief literally rebuilt him. Within months, he was back on his feet, stronger than before. This is the essence of the setting of limitless belief, to understand that nothing outside you defines you. Not failure, not judgment, not circumstance. Only what you believe about yourself has that power. Bruce didn't believe in luck. He believed in alignment, aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions so strongly that reality bends to your will. When you live like that, the impossible stops being a wall and becomes a doorway. Limitless belief also means freeing yourself from the fear of failure. Bruce saw failure not as the opposite of success, but as a necessary part of growth. He said, "Don't fear failure, not failure, but low aim is the crime. In great attempts, it is glorious, even to fail." To believe without limits means you must be willing to act without guarantees. You must risk embarrassment, rejection, and loss, because those are the tests that purify your belief. The more you face failure and rise again, the stronger your faith in yourself becomes. When you truly believe, you start accessing deeper levels of creativity and intuition. You stop second-guessing your instincts. You begin moving through life with a sense of flow, a confidence that whatever happens, you can handle it. That's what made Bruce's presence so magnetic. He didn't walk into a room wondering if he belonged there. He knew he belonged anywhere he decided to be. He didn't ask life for opportunities. He created them. People could feel that certainty it radiated from him. But Bruce's belief wasn't just about personal power. It was also about universal connection. He believed that the mind, body, and spirit were one, and that belief was the bridge that united them. When your belief aligns with truth, your energy becomes unstoppable. You start acting not out of fear or ego, but out of harmony with something greater. That's why Bruce said, "To know oneself is to study oneself in action with another person." He knew that belief wasn't isolation, it was expansion. The more he believed in himself, the more he believed in humanity's potential. To activate this setting within yourself, you must begin to question every belief that limits you. Ask yourself, who told me I can't? Who told me it's too late? Who told me I'm not good enough? Trace those thoughts back to their source. Most of them aren't even yours. They were planted there by others. When you realize that, you gain the power to rewrite them. Replace every "I can't" with "I can learn." Replace every "I'm not ready" with "I will prepare." Replace every "I'm afraid" with "I'm growing." Belief is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. The mind will resist at first. It will whisper, "You're lying to yourself." But that's just the voice of the old self, the one afraid to expand. Keep going. Keep believing until your new reality starts to reflect your new mindset. It always does. That's the law of consciousness. Bruce Lee didn't just teach martial arts, he taught human transformation. His belief was his greatest weapon, sharper than any punch, deeper than any philosophy. He believed he could unite East and West through wisdom and action, and he did. He believed he could move like no man before him, and he did. He believed that a single individual could redefine an entire generation's view of strength, spirit, and freedom, and he did. When you master the setting of limitless belief, you stop asking, "Can I?" and start declaring, "I will." You stop waiting for permission and start creating destiny. The mind that once held you captive becomes the same force that sets you free. You begin to feel life differently, lighter, more powerful, more infinite. You realize that the only real limitation was ever your imagination. And when that realization sinks in, you finally understand Bruce Lee's greatest truth. You were never meant to live within walls, you were meant to walk through them. You were never meant to follow, you were meant to become. Because once you believe without limits, the world itself becomes your reflection, boundless, powerful, and free. Bruce Lee's teachings were never about fighting others, they were about conquering yourself. Every punch, every philosophy, every word he spoke pointed toward one destination: mental freedom. He didn't want you to just train your muscles, he wanted you to awaken your mind. Because once the mind becomes free, the body follows, and life itself begins to flow. Each setting of the mind, emptiness, observation, detachment, inner dialogue, adaptability, stillness, and limitless belief is not a concept to be memorized, but a state to be lived. Together, they form the blueprint for mental mastery. They show you how to think less and see more, how to feel deeply without being controlled, and how to live fully without fear of loss. They are the hidden controls inside your consciousness, invisible switches that determine whether you live as a slave to the mind or as its master. Bruce Lee unlocked these settings not through books or theory, but through relentless self-discovery. He studied himself like a scientist, questioned every belief, broke every mental boundary, and turned his life into an experiment of evolution. He realized that the greatest enemy of growth is not weakness, but resistance, the refusal to change. And so he trained to become formless, to move through life with the freedom of water, to flow when blocked, to crash when necessary, and to remain pure no matter the shape he took. In the end, Bruce Lee's greatest victory wasn't on screen or in the dojo, it was in his mind. He proved that a human being, when aligned with purpose and awareness, can transcend every limit imposed by fear, culture, and circumstance. He showed that strength is not in domination, but in clarity. Power is not in force, but in understanding. Freedom is not in control, but in flow. When you apply these hidden settings in your own life, you begin to feel what Bruce felt: an unshakable calm in chaos, a fearless confidence in uncertainty, and an inner peace that no external event can touch. You stop being a victim of thoughts, emotions, and society's expectations. You stop trying to become someone, and instead, you become everything you already are. That's what Bruce Lee meant when he said, "The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering." Immortality doesn't mean living forever. It means living with such awareness, such authenticity, that time itself can't erase your impact. When your mind is unchained, your spirit becomes limitless. So empty your mind, observe without judgment, detach from outcome, reprogram your inner voice, adapt to every challenge, find stillness in motion, and above all, believe without limits. Do this and you will no longer live as the world shaped you. You will live as Bruce Lee did, as a force of nature, calm as water, sharp as lightning, and utterly, beautifully free.